If you want to save your artwork for use on a web page, use Illustrator's Save for Web dialog box. The file I have open is called Wineglass, and you'll find it in the Chapter 9 folder of the project files. And you'll see that I applied an effect. I have a drop shadow on there. And this artwork is on a plain white background. And you can decide when you're saving for the web, okay, do you want that to be a solid white background, or do you want that to be transparent so that you can put this artwork on top of something else and see what's behind it? So let's take a look. You can go up here to the File menu and Save for Web. You see we have a shortcut for Windows and Mac. And if you ever use the Save for Web dialog box in Adobe Photoshop, this is fairly similar. And let's take a look up here on top. First thing it shows you is just the original. And here's the original, which is just the plain blank white background it's considering as transparent. If you choose Optimize, this is how all of these settings here on the right are going to optimize it. Or you could choose 2-up, in which case you'll see here's the original on the left, and here's how you're optimizing it on the right. And you can see here's the original file size, is 645K, and currently with these settings here, it's just shy of 11K. Really the most important thing that you need to decide is what file format do you want this to be. And you choose this over here. And you see you could choose GIF, which you really don't want to choose for most artwork. And here's why. Look what happens with this drop shadow. GIF will allow transparency, but for only one pixel, or that is for only one color. So we have this transparent background, we have the transparency through the top of the glass, but this drop shadow is just an absolute mess, and that's really going to look horrible. So if you go and you choose JPEG, now JPEG is really nice, you'll have a nice smooth drop shadow. The problem is JPEG does not allow any transparency at all. Let me skip over PNG 8 for a moment, and I'll choose PNG 24. That means PNG format 24 bits. And look at this. We've got the best of both worlds. We have transparency, and we have a nice smooth drop shadow. The last thing you want to do, really, I can't imagine why you'd ever want to do this, is PNG 8. This is the worst of both worlds. This is really just the same thing as GIF. So for this particular example, I'm going to choose PNG. And if you're going to choose PNG, always leave transparency on, because if you turn transparency off, well, then you might as well just use a JPEG. If you are going to use JPEG, if you don't really care about their transparency, let's go over here, then you have different quality settings. And you can go from really lousy quality to really great quality. Or if you don't want to choose by number, you could just choose low, medium, high, very high, and so on. And all those are just different settings of those numbers. And what those numbers mean are this. The greater the quality, the bigger the file size and the less compression there will be, because JPEG is lossy compression. So the more you lose, the more pixels that you lose, the smaller the file size is, but the more degraded the image is going to be. So I'm going to set this back to PNG 24, and you notice that PNG does not give you all of those options. If you want to change the size, you can change the width and the height. By default, it's going to keep the proportions even. Or if you'd just rather do it by percentages rather than actual number, you can do that. Also, you see Clip to Artboard is turned on. That simply means that the image is going to be the actual size of the artboard with all of this empty space. If you want to clip all of that out, you actually deselect it, and now you see it's going to give you from the very first pixel on one side to the very last pixel on the other side. If you want to zoom in or out on the image, you can use the magnifying glass and then click to zoom in. If you hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, you get a little minus sign in there, and you can click to zoom out. If you're zoomed in, then you can use this hand tool to move around backwards and forwards. This doesn't change the size of your artwork. You're simply zooming in, looking in closer or farther away. All right, now let's just go and click Save. And I'm going to save in the Chapter 9 folder of the project files. And you notice that by default it gives you a hyphen in the name. And the reason is that files on the web cannot have spaces in them. Well, they sort of can, but it's really not a good idea. So even if you try to remove the space, Illustrator is just going to put it right back in there. If you really don't want that space, you could go and edit it in Windows File Explorer or the Mac Finder. So I'll click Save. It brings me right back here. Let's take a look at it. I'll go here into Windows File Explorer, and I can see there is that wine glass, and yes, indeed, it's 18K. And by the way, saving for web isn't strictly for the web. If you need to take your artwork and put it into a PowerPoint or a Keynote presentation, it's a good idea to save your artwork that way as well.